Hi everybody, Stephanie Haney here, your digital anchor, and this is our 3 News Now update. Hi everybody, Stephanie Haney here, what we're digital for you right now. And this is our 3 News Now update. First up, we're going to be talking about an NCAA vote that will have a huge impact for college student athletes. An NCAA vote that will have a huge impact for college student athletes, which is very important. You need to know this because we have an election coming up on Tuesday. Which is very important. You need to know this because we have an election coming up on Tuesday. And then we're going to be talking with Drew This will impact 80,000 reporter behind the And then we're going to be talking with Drew podcast, who is the senior reporter. If you haven't listened to that yet, you can catch that anywhere you get your podcast. It's the story of the murder and disappearance of Amy anywhere you get your podcast. It's the 30 years ago. The murder and disappearance. First, we're going to dive right into the NCAA news. The NCAA Board of Governors voted unanimously at a meeting at Emory University. The NCAA Board of Governors voted unanimously at a meeting at Emory University in Atlanta to allow athletes to and likeness benefit. This is huge for student athletes. Board Chair Michael Drake said the board realized that it must embrace change to provide board Chair Michael Drake said the board realized that it must embrace change to provide the best. The board might have had a little bit of motivation behind this because if you remember a few weeks ago, the board might have had a little bit of motivation behind this because if you remember, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed a bill into law that would allow California Governor Gavin Newsom hire agents get paid for endorsements and also be paid for the hire agents get paid for endorsements and also be paid if you remember for the use that would include things like the NCAA video games. And if you remember them. That would include things like the NCAA video games after NCAA 14. Now, EA Sports there was a lawsuit making those games after NCAA 14 and the NCAA. Because there was a lawsuit between players for the use of their likeness depicted in those games, so rather than play them or players wanted to be paid for the use of their likeness depicted in those games, so rather than play them or deal after the NCAA sorts out this rule. They have a little bit of time though because that California law sorts out this rule. They have a little bit of time though because that California law won't go into effect until January. The NCAA said that California passing this into a law. Now, at just created a bunch of NCAA said that California needed to be the organization that handed down change. Just created a bunch of confusion, and that the really what California was doing at this time was kind of forcing NCAA's hand. They said, look, really what California was doing at this time was kind of forcing NCAA's hand. They said, look, participate in these NCAA sanctioned events. We don't really care if we're not going to be eligible to the college football playoffs, NCAA sanctioned events. We're just going to do right by our students. The college football playoffs, the NCAA came out, they answered that. Going to do right by our students. So the NCAA came out, or they answered they're going to make a change. Now, of course, there will be a process. This was just the first step. They said they're going to make a change. Making this vote. Now, of course, there will be a process. This was just the first step. The board making this vote that players will be able to be paid for the use of their rules and regulations, and then those will have to be adopted. There's going to have to be redrafting of the rules. There's nothing to say that another state won't pass another law adopted now and then. That will. There's nothing to say that another state won't pass another law. But either way, very exciting news for college athletes today. I know a lot of people are very happy about that. I'm sure LeBron James is very happy about today. I know a lot of people are very happy about that. I'm sure LeBron James is very happy about that. So we knew the California was passing this law. So Governor Gavin Newsom actually did the signing, so we knew the California was passing this law. Here's some information that's really important for Cuyahoga County voters. Here's some information that's really important for Cuyahoga County voters. Location changes in Cuyahoga County Board of Elections. That includes 7 City of Cleveland wards. 16 municipalities. What that means that includes your polling location City of Cleveland wards. This impacts 80,000 voters in Cuyahoga County. Your polling location may have changed. Anthony Perlotti, who's the director of the Cuyahoga County Board of Education, is stressing the importance of getting this word out to let people know that their polling location may have changed before they go to try to vote on Tuesday. That their polling location may have changed before they go to try to vote on Tuesday. Get to their polling location. We may have people taking public transportation. So it's very important that you check your polling location before Tuesday when you go to vote. Now the board did mail all affected voters before Tuesday when you go to vote. Now the board did mail all affected voters a voter location notification card. And if you moved anyway, your polling location may have also changed. They may not have your updated address. Check your mail. Maybe you threw it out. If you moved anyway, your polling location may have also changed. Exactly where it is that you need to go. And I'm going to drop that link in the live stream right now because we have it up on WKYC.com. And I'm going to drop that link in the live stream right now because we have it up on WKYC.com. so that you can go exactly to that. Dropping that in the comments for you right now, so you can check your polling location from this link here. Dropping that in the comments for you right now, so you can check your polling location from this link here. He is behind. And then we'll be having Drew Horansky join us in just a moment. Now it's out everywhere you can get your podcast. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Now this is out now. It's out everywhere you can get your podcast. We'll also drop those links in just a moment. And we're going to hear from him sort of about his process, and we'll also drop those links in just about what it took to bring this 5-part series, which also includes elements for our TV show. To bring this 5-part series, which also includes elements for our TV show. So excited to have you here on our live stream.
It's always better with guests, right? Thanks for having me.
So excited to have you here on our live stream. You're listening on the live stream. If you have questions for Drew, let us know because we are following along. You're listening on the live stream. If you have questions for Drew, let us know because we are following along of Haney. What you think about the podcast, which is the story of the murder and disappearance of Amy Mihaljevic. So aside from the obvious, that Amy Mihaljevic killer is potentially still out there. Aside from the obvious, why is the story so important today?
For anybody who grew up in Northeast Ohio at the time, this is a story you just cannot forget. And I know who grew up in Northeast Ohio at the time, this is a story you just cannot forget. And I know for me personally, I was a child when this happened, and I remember that this Halloween was like that year. A lot of trick-or-treating had been canceled. Could happen to any child at that time. And I think it's just one of those cases that really was an end of innocence for a lot of us. And I think it's just one of those cases that really was an end of innocence for a lot of us. And I know as kids we were afraid, as adults we were. What happened to Amy, extremely rare, but it just made it, as adults we were, possible. What happened to Amy, extremely rare, but it just made it, she's in middle school, possible. She agrees to meet a stranger after school, who lures her to a shopping plaza to buy a present for her mom. Her parents are having trouble in their marriage. She just wants to buy a present for her mom, and she agrees to go. Her parents are having trouble in their marriage. She knew better. I mean, kids that age do. And she agrees to go. And she was a smart girl. But she did. And so I think there are a lot of things that age do. They know this forced us to talk about in our own families. But she did. And so I think there are a lot of things that how our kids this forced us to talk about in our own families is to do something like this. And how our kids are that they could be persuaded to do something like this and discovered in Ashland County. And 4 months later, her body ended up discovered in Ashland County.
And you were a kid at this time as well, growing up. How old were you when Amy disappeared?
So I was 13. I'm 43 today. So
how old were you when Amy disappeared?
So I was 13. I'm 43 today. So a few years older than her. 13 years old. And in our podcast, Amy would have been James Renner, who's really a known crime writer and who's really made something of a career out of this case. Who's really a known crime writer and who's really made something of a career out of this case. He's written a book about Amy. He knew her and really is the kind of go-to resource for this. And he was a little bit younger than me, right between my age and Amy's age. Kind of go-to resource for this. If you listen to the podcast, he tells some really relatable stories that I think people in Northeast Ohio. If you listen to the podcast, he tells some really relatable stories that I think people in Northeast Ohio playing video games up there. And then when Amy disappears, he goes up there. He talks about playing video games up there. And then when Amy disappears, he goes up there around the parking lot as a little boy, and he is taking it upon himself. And as he gets around the parking lot as a little boy, and he is taking it upon himself, and as he gets the resources of an adult, clearly it impacted him to try to find out what he can about her killer.
And as you mentioned, the whole idea of stranger danger is still very prevalent today. That was obviously very prevalent at that time. Is there anything still very prevalent today? That was obviously very prevalent at that time. Is there anything really specific that strikes out in your mind when you were a child? And even to this day, I remember trick-or-treating. I remember, and even to this day, what happened. I've said to my own children that the story that we tell, because what happened. I mean, the worst case scenario. Sort of the story that we tell happens because she is the worst case scenario. Data from the National Centers for Missing and Exploited Children. Even though again, 1% of a child data from the National Centers by a non-family member. I mean, the vast majority of kids who disappear, runaways, abducted by a non-family member. About 4%. It's usually a family member or some kind of runaways. About 4%. It's usually a family member or some kind of. You can't say this never happened in your life because it did. And I know even less than 1%. With the conversations I have with my own kids, you can't say this never happens because it did. And back on that, with the conversations I have with my own kids, the possibility that this can happen. Looking back on that, scarier perhaps is the fact that the person responsible has never been caught. And even scarier perhaps is the fact that the person responsible. It almost takes you back. Has never been caught. Has never been brought to justice. I'm 43, but I still feel like I'm 13 when I takes you back. And because it's scary. I'm 43, but I still feel like I'm 13 when I've been like for her when she realized that this person she was meeting was not somebody who meant good for her when she realized that this person she was meeting was not somebody who meant
good.
Very little
but
about how much time transpired between that meeting. We know to when she was
very
little about
we
how much
only
time
guess. And I can tell you this, Stephanie, this was interesting too, as we talk about the impact that this has on us as adults. We can only guess. And I can tell you this, Stephanie, this was interesting too, as we talk about the impact that this has on us as adults. We had identified people who not have had information connected to her disappearance, but we wanted to just talk to them and get a little bit of local color. What was it like growing up at the disappearance? What was she like? We wanted to just talk to them and get a little bit of local color. What was it like growing up at the no, just because of the fact that the killer hasn't been caught. Granted, this guy was going after little girls. I don't fact that we don't know the killer hasn't been caught. Go after adults. Granted, this guy was going after little girls. They didn't want to be connected to it in a public way. If he would go after adults, still they just didn't want to put their names out there. They didn't want to be connected to it in a public way. Maybe it's best for me not to come forward and if he did it once, maybe even after all this time. Maybe it's best for me not to come forward and impact now. Even after all this time, and I found that to be something really interesting about the impact.
Really great point that those people make. And this being a 5-part series, there's so much information in here. Great point. So that was clearly one roadblock. And this being a 5-part series, there's so much information in here. So that was clearly one roadblock.
The access to certain interviews. And this was the first time I've ever done a podcast. So just writing something that long, like you know, here on Facebook Live, we can talk. This was the first time I've ever done a podcast. So just writing something that long, like you know, here on Facebook Live, we can talk. You know, you're often limited to a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And we're doing a multi-part series so that we can share as much as we possibly can with our viewers. And we're doing a multi-part series so that we can share as much as something that long that times out to about an hour and a half. Writing my first podcast. For me personally, there was something that long. So I hope people listening, you know, give me a pass for that. For me personally, there was something that was new for me. I hope people listening,
I can tell you,
that was something that was new for me
personally. I can tell you, it was phenomenal. I listened to the full podcast the day it dropped on Sunday as the narrator, and also the person phenomenal. I heard so much information. You were great as the narrator.
Great help, Phil Trexler, James Renner, Susan Moses. But
all of this information.
Thank you. I had some great help, Phil Trexler, James Renner, Susan Moses.
But an hour and a half, right? That's a movie.
Absolutely.
That's feature length.
Even though it is an
hour and a half, right? That's a movie.
Cutting room
floor. That's true. Feature length.
But there are some things that get left on the cutting room floor. Is there anything that
it's funny when you ask that question.
You would like to share with our live
I think more might have gotten cut from our TV series. So I want to say people are interested in what they've seen in our TV reporting so far. TV series. So I want to say did not cut that much seen in our TV reporting so far. On the cutting room floor of our podcast, we really did not cut that much time limit. I think the one thing that I would have liked to have podcast that was the beauty of the podcast. We had no time really important to our viewers. I think the one thing that I would have liked to have, you have a background on this, and you know some of the legalities that come when you're doing something like this. And you're an attorney. We did not want to name suspects. No one has ever been charged, and so it was a very delicate process. We did not want to name suspects. No one has without wanting to reveal their names. It was a very delicate process, and that was very, very important because without wanting to reveal their names or make them identifiable, and that was very, very important. Which is really scary because to think that there are that many people that the family seems as this one does, which is really scary because to think that there are that many people that the family we wanted to be very careful about that. It's a scary thought in itself. That it would have been interesting, maybe. We wanted to be very careful to talk a little bit more with James. And I think that about how he confronted every single person that had talk a little bit more every person who has about how he confronted every single person that had personally met with, every person who has. And the interesting thing about that is they expected him to show up. They were like almost relieved. I mean, they wanted to clear their names. They expected him to show up. They were like mentioned to me almost relieved. I mean, they wanted to clear their names in the podcast about how just he mentioned to me. Thanks for showing up. Brief soundbite in the podcast. And it would have been more interesting to dive into that, but again, the concern would be if we did that, and it would have been more interesting to dive into that, but again, you know, when the concern would be if and when this is ever solved, there will be so many more questions, and it will be fun to circle back and see which of these there will be so many more questions, and it will be fun to circle back and see which of these theories actually come out.
You've talked to the Bay Village Police. So you mentioned if and when this is ever solved.
What kind of sense do you get from them?
You've talked to the FBI.
Never been closer. They're saying never been closer.
What kind of sense do you get from them?
We hear so much about forensic science and technology. They're saying never been closer. Because you know what, we hear so much about forensic science and technology, DNA versus mitochondrial DNA, and nuclear DNA being things like skin, nuclear DNA versus mitochondrial DNA are much more nuclear DNA being associated with our body. Mitochondrial comes from blood. Things that are and when you think of like Golden State associated with our body, mitochondrial comes from nuclear DNA. And the problem like Golden State, even though they had those hairs, they can never plug those into the same. And the problem with this case is even though they had those hairs, they can never plug those into the same database. Has developed a way that they can actually do that kind of nuclear DNA profile based on a hair, which they can actually do that kind of even a year ago was thought to be impossible, even a few months ago was thought to be impossible. So now if they can get that full DNA profile, even a few months ago was thought to be impossible. This is all protected stuff. So now if they can get that full DNA profile, in touch with this guy, or this is all protected stuff. We don't know if they've been in touch with this guy, or we can only they're not going to imagine now with that technology being available that they're going to be able to get something that can produce a better hit from those hairs. that they're going to be able to get something that could produce a better hit.
Where we are today, you mentioned the Golden State Killer.
And that is the exciting part.
It's not like this person has had to offer up a DNA sample.
Where we are today, you mentioned the Golden State Killer.
Exactly.
It's not like this person has had to
We've
offer
seen cases
up
where
a
they have
DNA
done matches
sample
back to like the 1800s for
Exactly.
Wow. So if they are able to get where they have done matches back to like the 1800s on one of these hairs, so if they are able to get a family member and then back their way on one of these hairs, they could potentially. I do want to say that there are family members, three different people. There are different ways those hairs could have come into contact with Amy's body. Maybe the car that she was in. There are different ways those hairs could have come into contact with Amy's body. Maybe the car that she was in. Contaminated body bag. James talks about how body bags have been used in that day. So car that was used to transport her to the killer's home. But at the very least, if you know somebody who might have been in the car that was used to transport her and have a lead that just hasn't been there before. Start asking people where they were in 1989. It's either going to be DNA, which we're getting better at, and that I think is conversations like this, our series, our podcast, we're getting better at. Get somebody to maybe come forward and conversations like this, our series, our podcast. I mean, that's why we get somebody to maybe come forward and give that tip that they've not wanted to give in 30 years. Somebody needs to talk. Somebody has to know something. Stories like this alive is that you can't do something. Somebody needs to talk. Somebody has to know something. Somebody you can't do something like this and get away with it.
Well, I just dropped all of those links into the live stream, so you can catch the podcast on Spotify. Well, I just dropped all of those links into the live stream, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast on Spotify. Make sure you check that out. It's Google Play, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast.
Good reviews help too.
Yes, absolutely. Subscribe, download.
Good reviews help too.
Yes, absolutely. Subscribe, download. Thank you very much for joining us. Very important that we can do more projects like this here. And thank you all for being here on the 3 News Now
update. I appreciate the opportunity.
If you aren't already, please make sure you subscribe to our 3 News Now update. If you aren't already, please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel every single time we go live. We do this every afternoon right around this time. So you get a notification. And our Facebook live streamers, we go live. We do this every afternoon right around this time. We really appreciate your comments. And our Facebook live streamers, keep them coming during every broadcast. Live stream, like our page, and appreciate your comments. I'm Stephanie Haney. Keep them coming during every broadcast. Like our page and keep following us here. I'm Stephanie Haney. Thanks.